You've heard the rumors that medieval women never bathed, that everyone stank, and that perfume was just wishful thinking. But what if I told you they had herbal deodorant, monthly bath schedules, and yes, even medieval mouthwash? Tonight, we're stepping inside a world of steaming wash tubs, secret scent pouches, and hygiene rules that would make your dermatologist cry. And trust me, once you learn what they used instead of pads, you won't be able to stop watching. Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something no medieval painting ever dared to show you. Body odor, bucket baths, and why smelling too clean could get you in trouble. You've heard myths. Medieval people never bathed, or everyone smelled like a barn. But the truth? Much messier, much stranger, and you're about to walk right into it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. I love knowing who's staying up with me. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're not standing in a castle. You're crouched in a smoky kitchen. A pot boils over a fire, steam rising as someone tosses in dried rosemary. It's not soup, it's bath water. Because yes, medieval women bathed. Just not every day, and never without a purpose. If you're rich, your bath is a wooden tub lined with linen, placed near the fire. A servant pours water slowly down your back. You don't scrub, you soak. Maybe. Mostly you sit while rosewater is dabbed along your neck and wrists. The goal isn't to get squeaky clean, it's to smell nice and not offend. If you're poor, the bath is a wash tub you haul from outside, water heated in pots, poured carefully. If your family's big, everyone shares. By the time it's your turn, it's more stew than spa. But still, you wash. You wipe your face with cloth in the morning. Rinse your feet at night. Scrub your hands with ash or sand when they're greasy. Medieval women weren't clueless. They just lived in a world where water was precious, and being too clean could raise eyebrows. Because here's the twist. Bathing too often was suspicious. The church warned that warm water opened your pores and let sin in. Some even said bathing invited demons. During the Black Death, public bathhouses were shut down entirely, not because of hygiene, but because people thought they were sinful breeding grounds. So, women adapted. You use vinegar-soaked cloths to freshen up. Herbal infusions, thyme, lavender, sage, are your version of body spray. You hang your chemise near the fire to dry and reuse. If you're lucky, you own two. If not, you rotate. Fast. Want a historical fact? In some nunneries, women were allowed to bathe once a month in winter, twice in summer. Unless they were sick, then they had to get permission. Because apparently even illness wasn't a good enough reason to be too clean. Of course, if you're noble, you have more access. Soaps imported from Moorish Spain, perfumed oils, scented gloves. But even then, you're bound by the same rules. Don't be vain. Don't tempt. Don't smell too good. And here's a quirky one for you. Some women carried pomanders, little balls filled with herbs, around their necks. Not as perfume, but to block out the smell of other people. A medieval air freshener, basically. So no, you don't live like a queen. But you know what you're doing. You steam your feet with thyme. You scrub with cloth. You scent your underarms with vinegar and mint. Not because anyone sees, but because you care. And that's the secret. Medieval hygiene wasn't about luxury. It was about dignity. In a world that gave women very little, this tiny ritual of care was something you could control. And as you sit now, near a warm fire, your skin still damp, your shift freshly aired, you breathe in the faint scent of rosemary and smoke. Maybe not clean by modern standards, but by yours, you feel like a queen. You start with your hair, not because you're vain, but because it's practical. Hair in the Middle Ages is long, often unwashed, and constantly in the way. So, first thing in the morning, you reach for your comb, wooden if you're poor, ivory if you're lucky, and begin the ritual. You comb it slowly, carefully, not just to tame it, but to clean it. Dust, hay, crumbs from last night's bread. They all have a way of settling in. No shampoo, of course, just fingers, patience, and maybe a rinse with cold water if there's enough to spare. If it's a special day, you'll mix up something extra, maybe egg yolk thinned with rainwater, or a bit of rosemary steeped overnight. It stinks while you're scrubbing, but your scalp feels lighter afterward. The trick is rinsing thoroughly, because the last thing you want is smelling like boiled egg in church. And the frequency? That depends. Noble women might wash their hair once every couple of weeks. Commoners, once a month maybe, longer in winter. It's not that you don't care. It's that time, water, and privacy are luxuries. You don't just wash. You prepare, you heat, you pray no one barges in. And when it's done, you braid it tight and cover it. Because loose hair? That's for girls, or sinners. Historians still argue whether veils were about modesty, hygiene, or just social control. You don't argue. You just know that if your hair is covered, people treat you with more respect. Now your skin. You've never heard of skin care, but you know how it feels when your cheeks crack in the wind or your arms itch from the summer dust. So you do what women have always done. Adapt. You rub goose fat on dry elbows. You pat your face with rose water if you can get it. You mash up herbs with lard and call it ointment. If you're noble, you might have jars of almond oil, beeswax creams, even imported powders. You know someone who uses lead paste to whiten her skin. It works, sort of. Until it doesn't. Until her lips go blue and her hair starts falling out. But she looks pale, and pale means powerful. It means you don't toil in the sun. It means someone else does your work. And then there's scent. You don't own perfume, but you know what smells good. Clean linen, fresh bread, dried lavender in a pouch sewn into your shift. Sometimes you crush marjoram with vinegar and dab it under your arms. You learned that from your mother. She learned it from hers. You might even own a pomander, a little metal ball filled with herbs and worn around the neck. Not for luxury, but for survival. Crowded markets, sick houses, even church, they all stink. And people believe foul air spreads disease. So you breathe through thyme and clove and pretend you're above it all. Here's a fun fact. Some women scented their gloves with orris root and cinnamon, so when they lifted them to their nose, it masked the world. Hygiene or self-defense? A little of both. But here's the irony. You're expected to be clean, but not too clean. A well-kept appearance is respectable. But bathing too often. That raises questions about your morals, your humility, your intentions. Because in the church's eyes, vanity walks hand in hand with sin. There's a line in a 13th century sermon. A woman who washes too often invites the devil to her skin. You laugh when you hear it, but you also tuck your soap root out of sight, just in case. If you're a nun, things get stricter. In many convents, bathing is allowed only once every month or two, and always supervised. One abbess believed warm water weakened spiritual discipline. Another thought it inflamed lust. You'd think a cold bucket would do the opposite, but logic wasn't always the priority. Still, even within the rules, women found ways. A quick wipe with a warm cloth, a hidden basin behind a curtain, a sprig of mint rubbed under the collar. You learn to survive between the lines. Here's a quirky tidbit you probably didn't expect. Some medieval women used crushed strawberries mixed with ground barley to exfoliate. It wasn't common. It was a noblewoman's trick. But still, imagine the smell. Sweet, earthy, a little fermented if you left it out too long. One way or another, you came out glowing. You also learn what not to clean. Ears? You twist a linen corner and hope for the best. Teeth? That's a whole other section. Feet? Always. Hands? Constantly. Because those are the parts people see. The parts that touch bread, babies, and prayer beads. So now you're dressed. Your hair's braided and wrapped. Your face is fresh, or at least less dusty. You dab a bit of rosemary water on your wrists. Not for others, but for yourself. Because there's dignity in smelling like something other than sweat and soot. You step outside. The morning air is sharp, full of wood smoke and wet grass. Your chemise is cleanish. Your feet don't slip in your shoes. You carry yourself a little taller, knowing you've done the best you can. Is it glamorous? No. But it's real. And it's yours. Hygiene isn't about luxury. It's about carving a little space of grace in a world that doesn't offer much. You didn't bathe in rose petals, but you survived another day, another scrub, another silent victory. And tonight you'll do it all again. It always starts the same way. A dull ache in your lower back, a tightness in your belly, and then warmth. You know what's coming. And no, there's no medieval version of a period app to warn you. Just your own sense of time, and the quiet wisdom passed down from your mother, your sister, your grandmother. When it comes, you grab your cloths, strips of old linen, folded thick and soft, washed so many times they barely hold together. You tie them into a belt or pin them into your undergarments. It's awkward. It slips. But it works. Sort of. There's no such thing as a pad, tampon, or anything even remotely discreet. If you're lucky, you have a few clean cloths to rotate. If you're not, you reuse the same one and pray for sunshine to dry it before nightfall. And no, nothing's disposable. After use, you rinse each rag in cold water, wash it with lye soap or ash, then hang it where no one can see. Some women bury theirs in the garden to cool the blood. Others burn them to ward off bad luck. Superstition? Maybe. Survival? Definitely. You're not allowed in church during this time. Unclean, they say. You don't argue. You just stay home, move slower, speak less. The rules aren't written on parchment, but they're everywhere. In glances, in silences, in how people keep a polite distance when you sit too carefully or shift too often. If the pain's too much, you drink chamomile tea, chew on fennel seeds, or place warm stones on your belly. Your neighbor swears by mugwort tucked into her waistband. You tried it once. The smell stuck around for days. Historians still argue whether medieval women understood their own reproductive health. Some say no. Others point to herb manuals, healing rituals, and how midwives passed knowledge down through practice, not parchment. You believe the second group, because when your aunt handed you a pouch of dried moss and whispered, "Use this when the cloths aren't enough," you didn't ask for sources. You just thanked her. Yes, moss. Some women used it instead of cloth. Soft, absorbent, plentiful in the woods. You cleaned it, dried it, wrapped it in linen. Strange? Maybe. But it worked. And in a world without options, function always beats comfort. Then there's the shame. Quiet, but heavy. You hide your cloths, your stains, even your cramps. You whisper, not because you're embarrassed, but because you've been taught this is private. Even among women, it's a secret coded in glances and nods. And yet, there's solidarity. You can tell when another woman's going through it, by how she walks, holds her stomach, pauses before sitting. You offer her mint leaves, a warm drink, a knowing smile. No words needed. Pregnancy changes everything. If your period stops unexpectedly, people start whispering, especially if you're young, especially if you're unmarried, especially if you've been smiling too much around the blacksmith's apprentice. Some women vanish for months, others return with babies. or don't return at all. But back to you. Your bleeding lasts 5, maybe 6 days. You count them by candlelight. You change cloths as often as you can, but sometimes it's just not enough. You scrub stains from your shift. You soak your bedding. You pray no one notices, because while it's natural, it's also judged. And pain. Pain is expected. There's no word for menstrual disorder. No doctors offering hormonal therapy. You tough it out, or you don't. And if the bleeding doesn't stop, if it flows too long, too dark, you worry. You chew bitter herbs. You see the healer. You whisper a prayer. Still you carry on. You bake, sweep, pray, smile. You move through the world as if nothing's happening. Because that's what's expected. Clean face, tidy hair, pleasant scent. No hint of the storm inside. Here's a quirky fact most people don't know. Some medieval women kept a moon calendar carved into a piece of wood, not for astronomy, for tracking their cycles. Discreet, simple, and shockingly accurate. Not all women used them, but those who did swore by them. And when it's finally over, when the bleeding stops and the pain lifts, you feel light again, clean again. You boil water. You wash everything, yourself, your clothes, your bed. You step outside, and even the air feels different. You don't call it empowerment. You don't need a word for it. You just know you got through it again. Quietly, privately, powerfully. That's medieval menstruation. No drama, no tampons, no sympathy. Just you, your rags, and the unspoken strength of every woman who's done this before. You wake up with a dry mouth and a tongue that feels like rough cloth. No toothbrush, no minty gel. Just you, your breath, and the quiet horror of wondering whether anyone will notice. You rinse your mouth with cool water from the jug by the bed. Then you reach for your tooth powder, a mix of salt, crushed charcoal, maybe dried mint if you're fancy. You dip your damp finger in, rub it across your teeth, and hope for the best. Because here's the truth. Medieval women did care about their teeth. They just had to get creative. There's no floss, no dental clinics. If your tooth hurts, you go to the village tooth drawer, a man with iron tongs, a strong grip, and very little mercy. If he pulls it, you scream. If he doesn't, you suffer. So, you try to prevent that. You chew fennel seeds, suck on cloves, rub salt on your gums. Some women even use chicken feathers to clean between their teeth. It sounds absurd. It works surprisingly well. You've heard noble women chew mastic gum, sticky resin from faraway lands, meant to freshen breath and firm the gums. You've never tried it, but you do chew parsley while preparing supper. It keeps your breath from turning sour, and it feels like control. Because in your world, a clean mouth isn't just hygiene, it's reputation, especially if you're unmarried. A pretty smile without a foul smell? That's worth more than dowries sometimes. And then, there's the kiss test. You've heard the rumors that noble women sometimes kissed their suitors once before a betrothal, not for passion, but to evaluate hygiene. Not their words, not their titles, just their breath. Historians still debate if this was common or just court gossip. But you believe it. Because you've been there, leaned in too close, smelled the wrong man. You remember the one who reeked of old cheese. And the other. Oh, the other. He tasted like cloves and cider. You didn't marry him, but you think of him every time you smell apples. Back in your home, you check your reflection in polished metal. Blurry, warped, but it's something. You scrub your lips with a rag dipped in wine vinegar. That's your version of lipstick. No red stain, but your mouth smells like effort. You mash calendula petals into goose fat and dab it on your cracked lips. A homemade balm. It smells earthy, but your lips are soft. Soft matters. A mainstream fact for you. Historical records show women rinsed with wine, vinegar, and even warm milk to keep their mouths fresh. You've tried vinegar, Wine's a waste unless it's cheap. And if your gums bleed, you steep sage leaves, or mash up myrrh if you can afford it. Some say honey helps, others say honey attracts flies. You settle for salt and prayer. You never forget your teeth, even when no one sees them. Because the first thing people notice isn't your words, it's the smell behind them. And if you're lucky, or brave enough, there might be a kiss someday. And if there is, you'll be ready. Not because your teeth are perfect, but because they're yours. Cleaned with crushed charcoal, rubbed with mint, protected with care. Your breath might not be sweet, but it won't drive anyone away. And in a world where women are told to stay quiet, stay small, stay proper, a clean mouth becomes its own kind of power. You'll never have a dentist, but you have clove and salt and secrets. And tonight, that's enough. It's not about how you look, it's about how you smell. That's what they judge first. Not your hair, not your manners, not even your clothes. Just that split second when someone walks past you and catches a breath of something. Smoke, sweat, or something soft and strange, like sage, vinegar, maybe dried lavender crushed into your underarm seam. You've learned how to control that moment. And in the Middle Ages, that's everything. Because here's the strange truth no one tells you. Smelling too clean was just as dangerous as smelling bad. A woman who bathed too often, who wore too much scent, who seemed too polished, that raised questions about her modesty, her virtue, her intent. So you learn to smell just right, a dab of thyme water behind the ears, a linen kerchief scented with rosemary tucked into your bodice. You might sew a sprig of lavender into your shift so when you sweat, it smells intentional, but never too much, never obvious. Your aunt once told you, a virtuous woman should smell like still air and clean cloth. Not roses, not musk, definitely not imported perfume. In fact, perfume was often seen as vanity, or worse, temptation. If a woman smelled too good, people whispered, who is she trying to attract? What is she hiding? Is she clean or cunning? Still, noble women wore scent, but carefully. A glove perfumed with orris root, a pomander filled with clove and ambergris. Little luxuries designed not to impress the nose but to defend it from the stench of streets, sickness, and sometimes sin. Here's a mainstream fact. In some medieval churches, women were asked to reduce their use of strong oils or floral water during Mass. Not because it was offensive, but because it was distracting. Scent leads the mind to vanity, one monk wrote. Apparently lavender could threaten salvation. And yet, there were saints who never bathed, but whose bodies were said to emit sweet smells after death. You've heard the stories. Saint Catherine, who never wore perfume but whose tomb smelled of lilies. A nun whose sweat carried the scent of heaven. Historians still argue, miracle or myth. You don't bother arguing. You're too busy surviving. Because the truth is, scent isn't just personal. It's political. The rich can afford scented gloves, clean shifts, imported soap. The poor rely on vinegar, fire smoke, and faith. You've boiled sage to soak your feet, rubbed lard into your hands when they cracked from winter, used burnt rosemary ashes to scrub your fingernails clean, not because you're trying to impress, but because dirt under your nails means laziness, and laziness means judgment. You know a woman who was turned away from church because she smelled too wild, whatever that means. You know another who got scolded by a priest for smelling of musk. It was just damp wool and anxiety. But the harshest judges? Other women. They notice, they sniff, they remember, and they pass those judgments down in silence, through looks, through shared water buckets, through who's allowed to sit near the fire. So you adapt. You hang your shift by the smoke hole so it absorbs the clean scent of ash. You sprinkle dried mint in your hair, even if it makes you sneeze. You chew on fennel seed while you knead bread. You don't call this self-care. You don't call it hygiene. You call it normal. Because when you smell right, people treat you better. They sit closer. They speak softer. They trust you. That's the secret no one carves into cathedral stone or scribes in dusty manuscripts. Cleanliness, in your world, is social survival. And it's also a quiet rebellion. You're told to be humble, but you carry a pomander hidden in your apron. You're told not to tempt, but you line your sleeves with sage. You're told to suffer, But you rub warm water behind your ears every morning, just to feel a little human. Because you are human. And tonight, as the day fades and the air cools, you sit by your hearth, still dressed, still dignified. You smell like firewood, and thyme, and linen dried in the sun. And for just a moment, no one's judging you. You've earned that peace. You survived another day in a world that asked for silence, obedience, and invisibility. And you answered with rosemary. Now the light is fading. Your shoulders relax. Your breath deepens. You've walked through steam, cloth, vinegar, moss, and myth. You've seen what they never painted. The rituals, the resilience, the real. So exhale. Feel the cool air on your clean skin. Hear the creak of the floorboards settling under soft feet. And know this. You were never dirty. You were never shameful. You were just a woman, making it through. Good night.